Hi guys, how are you? This is Dr. Vogel. Sorry with this little intrusion from Dropbox. I hope you remember that we talked about the positive and the negative inclinations that we as human beings have. Remember that even though the things are written in Spanish, my lecture is in English. Therefore, I need you to in fact, it's very good that you have both. So we are negative people, and in fact, it helped us to survive. Thinking about avalanches or floods or earthquakes was good because we were careful. That we have evolved in such a way, though, that being negative is no longer useful. Yes, you can be cautious, but the fact is that if we were optimistic beings when there was danger all around us, we would not be able to survive. Therefore, the genes that were passed on were those of negative people. Now, the things have changed. The rules of the game are different. Now, you survive with different set of skills, and the problem is our brain has not changed. Well, I mean, the fact is that it hasn't changed in the sense that it's only been a few thousand years. And the brain doesn't change in a few thousand years, it needs more than that. But the circumstances now, and we have seen it, the most positive people are the ones who go ahead and become great entrepreneurs, great leaders. And that doesn't mean that they're naive, because that's not this, it's not the same thing. Some people may think it's, being positive always is being naive or unrealistic or detached or in denial. But the fact is that positive people tend, people, just think about a positive salesperson. Um, it should be clear to you that being a salesperson, and I'm going to open my can here, my Coke bottle can. So no disrespect to you, but it's I'm on a live classroom, right? So the thing is that just think about a salesperson. A salesperson, if that salesperson has the negative inclination um, that our ancestors had, he's not going to make a sale. He's not going to make a sale. Now, are negative people always unsuccessful? No, but they learn to view life as a as a series of obstacles, and they have a very stressful life, and sometimes very unhappy. They have problems sleeping. It's just, everything happens to them. I've heard, and I'm gonna give you a story, which, by the way, you should write this down because you're gonna remind me of it. And by you reminding me of this thing that I'm gonna say right now, it's gonna make me see that you actually paid attention to this presentation. So just imagine the following. You have already the caveman, example of the caveman that was attracted to this beautiful cave woman, but he was cautious because he heard a noise. So he was negative in the sense that he imagined the worst possible scenario. Therefore, he escaped a lion that was, just nearby, looking to eat someone. And we have the positive caveman that just said everything was rosy and life was great and there were no dangers, and why be negative and everything. He got eaten by a lion. Okay, but now things have changed in the sense that these things are no longer as effective. Being negative is not as effective as it used to be. Okay, so now a different set of skills is needed. Okay, a different set of traits, and that's kind of right? Because what got us here in the first place, it was our negative inclination. So changing that is and it can be done, and that's why I'm here to tell you. It is doable, okay, and there are exercises for that, and I'm going to teach you a little bit of that. To rewire your brain that is used to have an inclination to the negative, we have to do something on purpose. If it doesn't come natural, which most of the time it doesn't come natural, we have to fool it or tweak or tamper with the mechanisms of the brain to make us more positive. So in the ice age, it was an intelligent reflection to suppose that something terrible was going on, and horrible, something dangerous was coming. It was really useful. Okay, it was good to think like that, and it dramatically increased our probability of success and survival. Now, the question becomes, and again, on pessimism or negativism, is it so useful today? Which we're very protected. We have homes, we have streets. We don't have the dangers that used to be from nature. Okay, now the dangers are others. There are dangers are more psychological. Getting robbed by someone in a sense, not robbed physically, but for example, somebody stealing your money, whatever, or fooling you, or tricking you, or somebody breaking your heart, or doing better in a test, stuff like that. That was completely not related to our primitive world. So in a very modern world, there is room for caution, but not for pessimism. Okay, so I want to convince you of that, in the sense that if you have to choose, I would rather be a positive person. I have learned, by the way, to be a positive person. I was not like this before. Okay, now I'm very positive, and I did it on purpose. And I did some things that I'm going to teach you. Okay, but just think about the salesperson example. You're not going to sell anything if you're negative. People are going to notice it. People not only notice it, they get it's contagious, in the sense that well, let me ask you this question. Let me just take a sip. Have you ever been around a person that is so negative that they talk about everything negative, and once you get out of that conversation, you feel drained and affected by that person? And on the other hand, have you ever been around a person so positive, so optimistic, so enthusiastic, that you also get contaminated in a good sense, by that person? I know I have, and I love being around positive people. And let me tell you something that's going to sound unchristian and uncharitable, but I'm trying to protect your psyche with this advice, and it's avoid negative people. It's written in a lot of books, a lot of research. Avoid them. Be nice to them, but don't hang around with them. Don't hang out with them. Don't spend time with them. If they're family members, say hi very politely, but don't stay too long. Okay? If you Because the first responsibility that you have is taking care of your own psychology. Okay? Now I want to think, just give you a sense of how this negative inclination has had an effect on the practice of psychology. And I don't know if you're familiar with the DSM-5, but it's the Diagnostic Manual and Statistical Manual of Mental Illness. And the reason it has a 5 there is because there have been 4 other editions in the past. And you have to realize how thick this is. It's like this is full of definitions of mental illness. So if I haven't convinced you yet that we had a negative, in the case of negative inclination affects everything we do, but no, you know what? Psychology is something we do too. So if we're negative in a lot of the things we do, well, psychology is definitely going to be affected. And that's why we have been trying to figure out what's wrong with a human being, listing as many weaknesses as we can, classifying pathology. Um, and we have to understand that the psychological well-being is not only the absence of illness. Okay, we have to realize that that's not the case. Absence of illness is just that, absence of illness, but it doesn't mean that there's psychological well-being. Now, it started with like very small manual, back in the day. We had, and yes, I understand that we start classifying things, classifying anxiety disorders, for example. There's a whole bunch of classifications. to try to understand, just to give you a sense of it. And please remember to write this down and mention it to me, okay? Because I will be measuring whether you remember, and not only remember, but also whether you were able to mention it to me, which means that you watched this video. So please mention this to me, okay? The fact that we have classifications, because the world for the human being is difficult to predict. In one way, we have a shortcut to make the world more understandable, because it's really, we can't bear the fact when we can't understand the world. We try to make sense of it. And one way of making sense of it is simplifying it so much that we get to the point in trying to classify things that are sometimes not easily classifiable. For example, mental illness. Um, and so we feel good now that we have a book that says, what's wrong with us, and why is it a major depression and not a minor depression, and why is it a generalized anxiety versus, just, panic attacks or whatever. And we have, yeah, there are things that are distinct, but does it mean that everything in life can be classified? Well, not necessarily. Okay, the things that we love to do it. And we love to do it. Why? And remember this, the sense of uncertainty is really scary for us. Uncertainty, the fact that we can predict the future, we would love to predict the future just to make us feel good. And I don't know if you remember the example about the babies in the Second World War, where they held a piece of bread in their hands, so they knew they were going to eat tomorrow. If you don't remember that example, please let me know so I can go through it again, because it's very important. It's just that the world being a predictable place makes it, a little bit less threatening to us. So it is a thing of, being careful in how we see the world. But okay, if that's going to make, some psychologists feel good about themselves, like, go ahead and classify things. But just so you know what happens when somebody finds something they can't classify because they don't understand it, or it's just too complex, or it has a lot of different elements. Well, they have the unclassified classification. And it sounds silly, but that's what it is. Once you don't know what they say, they have a section called unspecified. And all of a sudden it makes it sound very professional, just because it's unspecified anxiety disorder. What do I have, doctor? Well, you have an unspecified anxiety disorder. All of a sudden, you have something to call it, and it's supposed to make you feel better. And to be honest, I don't think it does, but they try. Okay. So we classify things to death. Okay, that's. And the thing is, let me convince you. Okay, if we were a balanced profession in psychology, we would have at least something as big or as thick as this, covering all of our strengths, all of our, the great things that human beings can do, everything that makes us unique, everything that makes us better than the animals, everything that makes life worthwhile. There should be, there must be, but there isn't, a book that is just as thick as this, classifying everything that's right with us, everything that's good about human beings, everything that makes life worthwhile, that makes life worth living. So the thing is that I urge you, and and I will challenge you to find something this big, and I have, if there is one, I have it, and I'll share it with you. With an encyclopedia basically about human strengths that we need to understand. Why? Because there's two ways of going around things. Either you fix the problems, or you focus on the strengths and get them. Because when you focus on the strengths, um, sometimes the problems go away on their own. I'm serious about this. When you deal with what's possible, when you deal with what's good, when you deal with what is, meaningful, and what gives human beings their motivation, and just makes them dream about life, sometimes the negative goes away. So it's not a linear thing. It's like I think I wrote it on the board. It's not like you first have to get rid of the bad stuff so you can get to the good stuff. No, that's not true. It doesn't work that way. Okay. So strengths should have a, I mean, I'm sorry, the weaknesses or the mental disorders should have a counterpart that it has, strengths about it. And I'll share with you because I have it. And there's just very interesting things there. Okay, but we're starting this movement. I hope you join me in this movement of trying to change the face of. You see, positive psychology is not just another class in the curriculum. Please understand this. It's a revolution. It's changing the face of psychology. Yes, you have it in your curriculum as another class, but the reality of what's going on out there, it is changing the world. It's changing the way we see psychology. Okay, completely. So let's think about this. Weaknesses as opposed to strengths of the human being. Okay. Um, the other thing that I want to mention, okay, is that we have the theory of the theory of well-being. Okay, and we have, forget about these because you have it in English here, and this is developed again by University of Pennsylvania and Martin Seligman, who directs this institution, the Positive Psychology Center of the University of Pennsylvania. It's like the mecca. We're talking about, like, the capital of positive psychology in the world. But now everyone's doing it. Even Harvard has their own little center there. And I'm going to get you the author. Remember, that's another thing you have to remind me. Who's the guy leading the Harvard program of positive psychology? Because he has some very interesting books that I have not read, by the way. I've read mostly stuff by the University of Pennsylvania, and also somebody that you have to know about. That I'm gonna try to pronounce it, by the way, and it's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. That was my best try. Okay, so we'll talk about whether that was pronounced correctly later. But that guy is a guru also in positive psychology, and he talks about um, human beings at their sweet spot. What do I mean by that? How is it that we get to a optimal performance? How is it that human beings sometimes do something so engaging, like playing the violin or doing art, or even reading business, whatever it is that triggers that for you, that time seems to pass by so quickly. And that's where time is really relative in your mind, really not so much in physics as Einstein said, but really it's in your mind that it's so relative, because time just seems to fly by when you're doing something you love. So this guy that I couldn't pronounce correctly, studied the condition that we call flow, 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 which is a state of uh, um, the state of optimal human experience. And he tried to understand this phenomenon and tried to replicate it in the sense that, okay, let me find out who are the people around the world that have this. And I understand them now because I do, right now that I'm teaching you. I don't know if you can notice it, but I am in my flow in the sense that I'm enjoying this incredibly. That I don't, it's not work for me. It doesn't, it's not work. This is fun. So for some people, it's like the worst thing that could happen to them, and it will be really horrible. For me, it's fun. So I am in a state of flow right now. Okay, but the question is, can we, in the process of well-being, of reaching that well-being state, um, can we replicate the state of flow? That's a good question to have, and we'll answer it in this course. Okay, but what is the theory of well-being? The acronym is PERMA, and you need to remember this, okay? Because each one of these is it's I don't know, it's like a doctorate in its own right. But at least you should remember that well-being should have these elements. We're not saying as scientists that this is it, nothing more. We're just saying that at least we have discovered that these are the elements that, if they are developed and nurtured, um, create well-being for human beings. Positive emotions, and we're not talking about hedonistic lifestyle, only looking for pleasure. That is not what we're saying here. Positive emotions. For example, gratitude. Gratitude is a positive emotion, and I'll show you the power of gratitude one of these days, because it is incredible what it does to the psychology. It has been, looked at something so simple and superficial that people don't understand its power. And now we know because we've done functional MRIs on people that practice gratitude, and it changes their brain chemistry. Okay, it produces neurotransmitters that are antidepressants, and I'll show you how that works. But positive emotions, it's not only about feeling good, but yeah, I mean, we have to find things that make us feel good, and don't think that we're just looking for pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. No, but positive emotions, and we have to define which are those emotions. Okay. By the way, we first need to understand what emotions we have, and we don't even know exactly how to call each emotion. We're very simple. We understand anger, we understand happiness, we understand fear, but how many emojis are there actually? There are a lot of them, and we don't use more than like four or five, because we can't. That's just an example of how we can't really name and differentiate emotions. But if we did, and we came up with a list of positive ones, we should cultivate them. The other one is engagement. And by the way, remind me, please, of talking about Daniel Pink. Daniel Pink, about his book Drive and the New Science of Human Motivation. He is a lawyer from Yale. Please remind me of that. I will be looking for people that remind me of this, okay? But the fact is that people who are engaged, and there's a little bit tied to the flow concept, people that are so engaged in an activity, the time flies by. I mean, just being engaged in something, it is an involvement, 100% involvement in what you're doing. Okay. um, Positive relationships, I talked about a little bit about avoiding negative ones, but let's talk about, we will talk about how to find and develop positive relationships. There are some toxic relationships out there, very toxic, and we should avoid that. It's only one life we have to live. There's not many. We don't have more than one life. Okay, what are we gonna choose? Are we gonna choose to live our life, um, negative, just going by and just mediocre lifestyle? I don't think so. Then we're gonna talk about meaning too. If we're gonna be fully um, well, it has to be there has to be meaning to what we do, and this is and remind me also that has been proposed also by Viktor Frankl in the book Man's Search for Meaning, that gave birth to the movement of logotherapy. He was on the Auschwitz and Nazi concentration camps, a psychiatrist who observed the people that were dying, and the people who were surviving. And what he found out was that it had nothing to do with physical health. And I'll tell you, but you have to remind me. If you remind me, I know you did. You watch this and listen to it carefully. Okay, we'll go deeper into this, but just an introduction, and then a sense of accomplishment, something that we did as a result of our own effort, something that has meaning, of course. But even those accomplishments are small, but something that we were able to do, and usually as a result of our own strength and our own work. If we cultivate all these things, all this theory, grossly simplified, because there's a lot of stuff that we have to look at in this course, this would be the basis of this theory. And we're going to stop it there, because then I want to talk to you about how this has changed the way the world is looks at different countries. For example, positive psychology provides an alternative in how we see different countries. Okay, poor countries, rich countries, are they better off just because they make more money? Or are they worse off because they're too superficial? Psychology, and even the United Nations and all these organizations, money was like very important to happiness. But we'll see. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying, we have to keep it in the right perspective. And this new theory gives us that perspective. So let's stop it there. You have to, I'm going to write an email when I post this. You have to write back with a comment, one paragraph comment about this presentation, and be ready for Friday because I'm going to have a short test on Friday about this. Okay. So and I'll be so don't worry about it, but just be ready. Okay.